Viewers, welcome back to the Personal Injury Law Show. Before the break, we were talking about superannuation and how it affects people. Sarah, I want to get on to the most recent case involving superannuation, a pronunciation by the High Court in a matter of Finch and Telstra in 2010. Can you give me the facts?
The facts of that case, Tony, was that a gentleman went under gender reassignment surgery and became a lady. She then started.
How old was this guy?
He was in his 40s. He was relatively long.
20, I think 21 at the time of the first gender change there.
Yeah.
Then he started working with Telstra. He became uncomfortable with the change and reverted back to being a male. As a result of the reversion back,
Sounds painful.
he did. Was bullied and harassed a little bit at work. He developed a psychological condition and as a result ultimately ceased working at Telstra. Now the policy in that case was very specific. You did have to be off work for 6 months and you also had to be unlikely to return to work, but you had to stop working with that particular company. Now this court, of course, he made a claim. It was rejected twice by the fund.
Can I stop you for a minute? Now let me get this right. We've got a male who becomes a female and then becomes a male again.
That's right, Tony.
Geez, that's bizarre. And I guess he would have been pretty poorly treated at work, Nuncio.
He obviously was, and that stemmed from his psychological injuries. Obviously he was a butt of jokes, I would have thought, and harassment. And
that's right.
And how long was he at Telstra? Was he there for a long time?
No, he was only there for about 4 years.
Okay. So his condition developed because of the fact that he was a butt of jokes, Nuncio.
Look, I think it is, Tony, and so didn't explore the actual specifics in the case, but that was where it all stemmed from, though.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we've gone a long way in society.
Yeah.
We've got to look at what we say. We've got to be very careful, haven't we?
We do,
bullying these days and everything else. But anyway, sorry, Sarah, I interrupted you.
No, you're right, Tony.
And we're talking about, you were just going into the details of the case, but what did the High Court say? Who wants to...
Well, I said it was, as you said, initially the plaintiff, or Mr. Finch, or Miss Finch, however you want to call it...
That's why she won, because of that sort of comment, they were picking on her. Anyway.
Yeah. She was successful at first instance, then on appeal lost, and then went to the High Court where she was successful. Again, he or she, I can't get it right.
What was the reasoning behind Finch? I'll call it Mr. and Mrs. Finch winning. What was the reasoning behind it?
The High Court said that the determination by the trustee that it had to be so specific to be employment with that particular employer and to be off work for that time was too onerous a task. So it was too difficult for someone of a lay person to achieve to actually get the claim across the line. They also said that the fund did not give the claim real and genuine consideration. So they didn't do proper investigations into the material that was provided by Mr. Finch, and also some comments that he made to the fund directly did contribute to his claim being rejected initially.
So it was purely a side case, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and Mr. Finch or Mrs. Finch was pretty confused to start with. So
obviously, I think everyone's confused, Tony.
No, I'm just saying it's a sad case because Finch has got issues, obviously.
Yeah.
But
an interesting part of this case is that after Finch left Telstra, off work for about 12 months and then commenced with 2 different employers, one of Qantas and also Foxtel.
Yes.
I think Qantas was 5 months and Foxtel was a month. And that obviously complicated the claim as well, but that's ultimately what the court found, that the trustee and the fund did not give consideration to those, how we cope with those employments.
Well, the case law says you've got to use common sense. You can't just be onerous and just look at it technically, don't you?
Yeah.
You've got to look at it common sense approach.
That's right, Tony.
Let's get on to the case of death benefits under these policies. There's an interesting case.
Tony?
Do you know the facts of that one?
Yeah, this is a case, said it's arising out of a death benefit. A young male died arising from a motor vehicle accident. Had a partner at the time, a de facto partner, and also a young child. The issue here was that the super fund initially decided to provide 75% of the death benefit, which I think was about 220,000, 75% to the de facto and 25% to the child. Everyone thought it'd be normal, but then the parents of the deceased took issue with that. and wanted a piece of the pie, you could say. And that's where this fight began and ended at the federal court. So it was
And
a
so how was
long-standing
the
battle.
distribution eventually?
Look, it remained 75 to the de facto and 25% to the child. Basically, the ultimate finding was that the de facto was a financial dependent, and that's what the wording of the policy should focus on. Not
Don't the
emotional
trustees
side.
have to have a look at who's got most needs? Is that the key to the whole thing when you're dealing with death coverage?
They do with death coverage. They do look at the dependency requirements. They've got a bit more discretion, the trustee, when it comes to death claims than they do with a trauma or a TPD claim.
Assuming you want to make a claim on a death policy, let's say there's a de facto, there's an ex-wife, there's children from a first marriage, a second marriage. You have to put the trustees on notice, don't you?
Yes, you do, Tony.
In case the money's paid out.
That's right.
And so it's important you get a lawyer in those circumstances.
It's very important you speak to someone and get some legal advice about this, because ultimately it is a complex area, and you really don't want to be doing that on your own.
And so the trustees have got to look at who has the most needs. Is that the facts?
Yeah, and they focus more on the financial dependence as opposed to the emotional dependence. In Edward's case, the parents alleged that they were getting some money and also they were emotionally dependent on the deceased, and the court found that, look, that is a consideration but not the ultimate consideration.
Well, I guess in law, the only thing the courts are really interested in is financial dependency.
Yeah.
And usually spouses are the ones that are going to get priority, you would have thought, if they're not working.
And a child.
And children.
Which is understandable.
Totally.
But it just shows, again, that you need to seek advice, because you can make nominations under your super fund. Again, I don't think a lot of people would be aware of that, Tony and Sarah, so it's important that you see a lawyer and make sure you know who you're actually going to leave your money to in the case of death.
That's correct. Sarah, it's a massive area of law. We've only touched on two cases very briefly.
Yes.
And there's enormous amount of cases in this area.
There is,
and they're
Tony,
all
yes.
over the place, aren't they?
They are.
And in fact, most cases do succeed, don't they?
They do. A lot of them get up either at court, or the most important thing is to try and have a good claim to start with, so that it gets approved at the time the trustee assesses it. So it saves the hassle that Mr. Finch or Mrs. Finch had to go through in going to 3 different levels, court levels, to actually get a determination made in his favour.
But there's a lot of court cases that say that, notwithstanding the fact that a decision's been made, you can still keep providing additional material and
Yes,
ask for
you
further
can.
decisions.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of scope to actually get a matter accepted.
There is, and the more medical material you have supporting you, of course, the stronger your claim is going to be.
Well, Sarah, you've just dealt with the issue of how to get a claim over the line. Look, I really want to thank you for coming on board. You're very bubbly and enthusiastic, and no doubt we'll get you back in the future. Thank you, Sarah.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
And viewers, stay tuned. We'll be back with Kathy's mailbag just after the break. Thank you.